All right, let's move on to our next topic. It's going to be my topic. If Steve ever comes back, that'd be great.
Yep. I like how it just keeps bouncing back and forth.
Intervention, man.
Yeah.
Intervention.
Why do people hate millennials? I've been listening to a lot of radio and news, and unfortunately my Facebook feed is filled with things like, I can't stand this generation. Yeah, they're entitled, and everybody, like, somehow along the way, we have essentially been associated with everybody gets a trophy. We want everything to be free. So these are like the things that I'm noticing that irk me on the skin, and I have a hard I don't understand why people are associating this with us, but because I feel like it's being misrepresented in what we want. But we want everything free. There's this like idea that everybody earns a trophy. We're sissies because we're too sensitive. We're too politically correct. We stay at home far too long. We don't get a job. We don't spend money. Maybe if you guys have other stuff, but those are like the top 5-6 things that I keep seeing in this generation, and like what's wrong with this generation, and they just really hate on it. Maybe it's too is because it's really fun to hate on hipsters. That's like a trendy thing, and a lot of millennials I think get this hipster kind of vibe to them, and hipsters are very polarizing, right? You either really like them or you don't. They could come off as very what is it? What's the word? When just like a nose to everything. They're pretentious. They're very pretentious, right? So I wanted to know what you guys thought in terms of
why do people feel that way?
Why people feel that we have this self-entitlement. Why they feel like we want it, because they have like this thing. I've seen this a ton. It's like this millennial wants everything for free, and it's like, what does she want everything for free, or is like it's bizarre to me, because what was she advocating for was like advocating for free college education and not having student loans, and everybody's like, back in my day I worked for every dime that I had to go. But I was like, back in your day, you didn't come out of college, or even go to college for that matter, and then end up with a mortgage payment every month that you had to pay, in addition to trying to get a mortgage payment. And so, yeah, like, I absolutely understand that a whole generation who's being screwed over by not only the federal government, but the privatization of corporations loaning out these student loans, and these colleges that are for profit screwing over an entire generation, and therefore an economy, and a global economy at that, that's having ripple effects, because people can't buy cars, people can't buy houses, people can't go out and get jobs. Like, yeah, I totally understand why someone would come onto a TV network, a news network, and be like, yeah, I want education to be free. I shouldn't have to come out with $100,000 plus in student loans. That's $100,000. Like, the average cost of an out-of-state university, which I would argue a lot of people do, is somewhere in the tune of $30,000.
That's insane.
4 years of that.
And there's a lot of people that
369,
have that
Okay, guys, I'm back. Cool. We're talking about the app we're going to use the most, right?
No, we're not. We're talking about college education.
Oh, we're talking about college education.
We're talking about millennials and why people hate them. And so, like, so that's just that. Like, I named 6 things, and I would love to talk about all of them, but that's just one thing as to why I can't understand why people are like, oh, she just they look at it as whiny, but what I look at it as, from my perspective, is evolution, right? Evolution into our process, into how we bring people into this world, how people become adults. I think it's absurd that when you become an adult, you have this mortgage payment, and you can't just be like, well, then just don't go to college. We're like, well, what the fuck, man? If you don't go to college, not only are you limiting your ability to move up in this world, but you're also like, how do you get ahead without a college education these days? So you have to go to college, you have to spend this money, you have to end up having this, and if your parents don't have the money to spend on college for you, you end up with a bunch of student loans. So yeah, that seems like a broken system. Why aren't we more sympathetic in understanding that this system needs to be fixed? Therefore, and i.e. fixed meaning it should be free, ideally, right? Like, that's the thing you should shoot for. If you could at least bring it down by 100%.
Now, here's the thing that they're like, oh, you want it for free. You want it for free. Like, that's the part where they're like, oh, the entitlement stuff. But this is the thing. Like, I want it for free for my children in their future, and I want it free for everyone's children in the future for moving forward. And I have absolutely no problem having to pay or fork over, my taxes a little bit higher or whatever it has to be to make sure that it is that for the community. Like, I have no problem for that. So yeah, I am asking for free education for the generations coming up, with the respect that I'm willing to pay my fair share to help that out, to make that capable of happening.
Well, I want
you know what I mean? So that's not like being entitled by any means. That's me working my ass off and trying to give back to the community so that everybody can get a higher education, because I know that will eventually affect the entire whole country.
Right.
I mean, it will affect the country as a whole. Like, that ripple will be a big thing, and maybe raising our education will, or making it free will allow a lot more than just 40% of the. Well, I mean, 40% is a huge amount, by the way. So when we're talking about this college debt situation, like when we talk about millennials, 40% of the millennials are getting college educations. So it's like it's the highest out of any other generation that's existed. Mm-hmm. So we are the ones that understand fully about student debt, like, and what it feels like. And with the increase that's happened of student tuition over these past decades, it's like a lot of the generations that call us entitled had to only pay about $20,000, $30,000 for college, where now colleges are ridiculously expensive.
Isn't our education system anyways last, like out of like the whole world, pretty much? Like,
I wouldn't say last, but we're not the best.
We're like in the 20s.
But we're certainly not the worst.
Yeah.
We're in the 20s from a lot of
entertaining.
Yeah, I thought it was like 28 or something like that.
23 and a lot of like 20. It just depends on what you're talking about. Like if it's math, science, like writing.
Math for sure.
Well, and basically, college is really pushed heavy on kids. It's like, hey, when you graduate high school, you should go to college. Okay, well, it's this huge amount of money that you have to pay for, and they're loaning out the money. And basically, they then say, oh, well, what do your parents make? And they're basing it off of that. And I don't think that's too fair, because there's a lot of times you're like, okay, I'm the
one that's going to be paying it.
Yeah, I moved out when I was 18. Why does it matter how much they make? Because they're not contributing. So, like, there's a lot of flaws in this. And these institutions, pretty much they're companies at this point. These universities are just making hand over fist on money.
Hand over fist.
Yeah, because, I mean, you look at the college I went to,
and then those loans get sold over to many different companies. Then you're never paying off the principal amount, and you're just paying off interest to multiple different companies with a split loan. And they don't tell you really that it's like occurring. It's like they get you notified in like a very subtle way, but then you get hit with these like, what the fuck? How do I still have this much in debt? I thought I was paid like $3,000 already towards this.
Yeah. No, you got what it is that if you defer it or anything like that, interest still occurs on those things. So that's why that keeps building up. People are like, oh, I'm just deferring it till later, but that's why you have the different types of loans on that. So you got to be conscious of, you might just be racking up. You might have had that loan for $1,000 and then out of nowhere it's like $3,000. Well, that's because it's been just collecting interest. And people are like, there's some that don't do that until you're out of school. Then there's some that do it while you're still in school. I forgot the name. Subsidized, I think, is what they're called. So you got to really pay attention to that. But they can just sit there and stack up, and people are like, oh, I'll pay it later. I'll pay it later in life. And then out of nowhere, boom, you got a $30,000 bill.
Yeah.
That originally was $10,000, and you're like, fuck.
And we can move on from student loans to other things about millennials in just a second. But what I wanted to just add is so millennials are currently defined. Bloomberg did a study. 18 to 35 are what is considered millennials. The average student debt between that age range for millennials is $41,286.60. Average.
Wait, how much?
$41,286.60. Average. So that means there's a lot higher and a lot lower, but that is much higher than the Department of Education.
That's a really high average. You wouldn't want to expect like a 30,000, like a low 30 average.
20,000?
You know, not a $40,000 average.
Yeah, so it's pretty high up there. It's a lot of student loans to pay. So that's one thing.
So even breaking away from that still too, like our money doesn't go as far. Like that's another thing too. We're all still applying for the same jobs that like our parents applied for, and they were making the same amount of money that we would be making still to this day. But that money doesn't go as nearly as far as it did in the 80s for them or the 90s for them. You know what I mean? Like, and even the generations before that, to say it's like they were getting their their freaking gasoline at under $1,
Right.
and everything was like 25 cents and all this and that. And yeah, they were making their $40,000, but they were sitting really nice. Now the people making the $40,000 doing the same exact job now, it's really equivalent to making like $18,000.
And we
with the inflation.
We did that like a couple episodes ago, Rocco, where we looked at the difference between how much your income is and how much
Middle
things
class.
cost, right? The middle class, right? And so
Yeah.
we've
Yeah,
definitely
that's right.
determined that the amount of income that you get does not, right? You just said does not get you as far. So we
No.
have that going against, and then you stack on something like an extra. What I mean, that's probably like an extra $100-$200 a month on student loans, right? That hits the wallet pretty hard, and then you have rent being pretty high like and the
Well, that's why
housing
they're-
market being pretty
they're just-
volatile. That's
Like I
tough.
was saying, we're not putting back into our money back into the system because we don't have extra money to put back into the system. We're like all living paycheck to paycheck kind of deals, and those aren't really. That's not like we were talking about that like average amount of savings. Those people have the savings in their accounts and finding out that they don't. Like, I'm seeing that it's just I don't know.
Well, no, and you're right,
Well,
because we've
like-
also been a generation that has, at like the majority of our generation when getting into the workforce was between 2006 to 2012, 2013, and during that time, we've basically seen the entire economy collapse into a recession. So
Yeah.
when we started to make money, or with the lucky few that
We've been
had,
in a recession the whole time
we've been in a
doing
recession,
it.
so we don't trust things
Yeah.
like the home loans and the Wall Street. So we really stock our money away for if that can happen again. I mean, we talk about how babies and like other people, like when your first experience with something is traumatic, it can affect the way you look at things in the future. When our first experience into the workforce is be careful because people are losing their homes.
And-
Because they didn't save
and their
money.
jobs
It's
and
like
everything.
I better save my money because this is crazy. I've never seen this before. As opposed to someone being like, "Well, I've lived 20 years and worked
Yeah.
fine, and this happened. We'll be fine because this will turn. It will come back around." So there's a whole section of that generation that are pretty like PTSD, shell shocked. Like they don't know if it's gonna tank again, so they're saving their money. Like they don't know how bad this could be or it can get.
Now, to go back to your original question is why people hate millennials so much. I think another thing is that we're so out there. We have all these social media, so you can sit there and voice your opinion. Back in the day, I mean,
Yeah, that's
they didn't
true,
really
too.
have that a lot. So if you think about like the 60s and 70s and all the free love and
lot of-
everything like that, they would the generation before them probably would be saying the same thing about them.
Yeah, oh, sure.
Look at these free loving
yeah.
people,
Oh, yeah.
And they
all they
did.
want to do is just, and that's but it just wasn't as mainstream. So
Right.
I think with those mediums of hey, every person has a voice now. Then of course that's when other people complain about that voice of our millennials. So
Yeah,
And they
it's-
and
I
they
see
w-
that.
so what do you think about them calling like us just like too politically correct and like sissies? Like I take issue with that because it's like, oh, NFL is changing their policy. Football in general in America is changing their policy because they're not going to do helmet to helmet. And it's like, and they're like, oh, these millennials, they're calling for this stuff and they're just a bunch of sissies. I'm like, well, I don't know. There's an entire like group of people who play football who now are dying early or have dementia because the rules in the NFL. Like, why is that a bad thing to want? Why is it so manly and so bad to have people like clash their heads together like that? Like, I don't want my favorite NFL player to retire and die or forget that his kids' names and
Well,
parts of
'cause
his
then
life.
There won't be any boxing left, won't there?
Well, I mean, sorry, if boxing is like directly relating to something like that, yeah, I think you should change the rules a bit. Or
For boxing, like no head punching,
Well-
just body blows.
So we'd
just blow
have to,
kisses at each other.
we're painting a big picture here in broad strokes. So obviously, without hits to the head, boxing ceases to be a sport. But there's ways to make it safer. And I'm not even talking about boxing because boxing is not something that like has been like, oh, this blah blah blah. Like it's football. It's direct head-to-head contact. And the idea is to not spear somebody with your head as opposed to boxing, which is punch the guy in the face because that's all you could do, body and face. The idea is to tackle, bring him down to the ground. You could do that without spearing your head into the other guy's helmet. So they've incorporated rules, fines, and other things in terms of like getting people away from habitually hurting themselves like that.
Yeah.
And they're trying to
So are
improve
you
helmets as
saying
well.
boxing's not a sport?
No, Steve.
What, Steve?
So
I'm looking for my
troll.
troll face. I'm looking for my troll face.
So-
Can't find it anywhere.
So yeah, and like I don't. So there's people out there that are very vocal about.
So,
It's
there
such a
was this-
wussy.
There was a comedian I was listening to about the politically correct thing, and it kind of makes so like he was talking about a lot of people I got offended. You know what I mean? It's like
That was
people
beautiful.
do get a little offended pretty easily nowadays. Like like you want to be able to have you want to be politically correct, but sometimes it's like you got to be blunt a little bit sometimes too to be able to say like facts without stepping on eggshells to get around it. But at the same time, we also have to respect other individuals. We've clearly have had vocabulary in our language for thousands of years that hasn't been really checked, right? Like, and we need to start checking it. Like,
Yeah,
how does it make people feel? How does it do this or how does it do that? And that's respectable. That's like when we talk about respect, right? You know what I mean? How the elders say you need to respect your elder, you need to do this. Like, wouldn't being politically correct, isn't that like the ultimate form of respect?
Yeah.
For
Well, wouldn't
talking.
you-
Well,
Like,
that's why
for
that's why I have
talking
that.
and
Would
communicating
you
with
say
another individual.
Would you say millennials are like that? Like they're not as they're more sensitive to like all that
That's
stuff. Like
what I've heard.
Like
Yes.
that's what you're saying.
Yes.
Well, because wait, are we millennials?
Yes.
Is that
Yes.
okay? So I'm not sensitive to that stuff at all.
That's
like,
fine. It's the majority, and that's also my
that's
point. Is that there's a lot of just paint like, oh, all millennials are hipsters. Like, Steve,
Right.
you're not a hipster. Ian, you're not a hipster. Rocco, borderline.
I'm offended that you said I'm
Hold
not
on,
a hipster.
hold on, wait a second.
Rocco borderline.
Yeah.
I'm a hipster.
You're not a hipster, Steve.
Yes, I am.
You're not a hipster. You don't even drink Starbucks.
Look at it.
I do drink Starbucks. You kidding me?
So
You don't drink Starbucks. You can't
I
be a hipster,
do.
man.
I'll go
actually,
get my
that wouldn't be
Starbucks.
hipster. Hipster would be like, oh, Starbucks is too mainstream. I'm gonna go drink.
we go.
Exactly.
Wawa.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
go drink some Bula coffee, which I just did.
So anyway, so like what we're talking about, Steve and Rocco, maybe you can go into more detail because the politically correct thing is pretty charged with me personally. It's like, can you define what most people are talking about when, like, give me examples
you get
of when
offended?
people
So, like,
say we're
wait.
too politically correct? Can you give me an example of when someone is being too politically correct? 'Cause I'm very interested in what people think. How could you like? That's like saying we respect people too much.
That's what I'm trying to say is that I'm a advocate for being politically correct. Like, I want to make sure that I'm always being respectful for people, especially when I'm communicating with them. That's like my job. So I'm like, I've learned that heavily, being politically correct. But at the same
So, like-
time, I've also learned that it feels like sometimes in conversations, but it's like I can't say maybe something exactly the way I want to say it.
Like, can you give me an example?
I'm trying to think about that.
So like Ian saying
so I can't.
to me last week, he might even buy you a taco. Stephen Landis, is that politically correct or?
That is not politically correct at all.
Right, but
Well, like my best friend just came down. Nam, we were at the coffee shop, and my other best friend Nikki was like, "Yo, Nam, did you download the Pokemon Go app?" And I was like, "Of course he did, man. He's Asian."
okay.
And he's like, "That was the nicest racist thing you've ever said." That's what he's like.
But these are different.
So wait, you're talking about that like politically correct, or that's
I'm
not
talking about that, but I'm talking about like, Steve. Instead of you saying that to a friend and you
But you
being
said that to a
Steve,
stranger.
you're a politician and you're saying that about all Asian people who you don't know. Like, I get the sense that when they're like, we're being too politically correct, they're talking about like, when I'm up here speaking to a vast majority, you guys are expecting me to be way too sensitive. Like,
That's
well,
exactly actually what they're talking about.
right. And so like, if Steve's talking to a friend and they have a really good rapport and he says something that he knows won't offend the other person, that is
Right.
not being politically correct. That's being funny and being a human. When you're
And
up as a
just joking with
politician,
your buddy.
yeah, but there's a time and a place. You don't go
But
up.
when you're up there and you're talking to an audience of diverse diverse people, you're not going to go and sit there and say the
Right.
same shit.
Yeah,
you know?
and so I have
joke.
so I'm trying to find examples of like.
So then, what makes a comedian though able to say something like that? Like I know exactly the
'Cause he's
comedian
bringing
he's talking
humor
about.
to
he's
it.
bringing like, and
Okay.
that's
You can
exactly.
talk about anything.
So you
if
can't do it at like a serious moment. You can do it at a funny moment.
Yeah.
That's the same thing
Not
as if
much
you're like
people.
sitting there with the Jews and stuff like that, and you start talking about Hitler being in a serious moment, right? But you can still have you not heard Hitler jokes and
Oh, yeah.
jokes and stuff like that? Because they could bring humor to anything.
So that's
If
like
it's, like-
politically correctness then. Like
No.
if it's the right place and time then.
I think that's part of it.
I guess
Yeah,
that would.
it's
That's
definitely
part. I
part
would
of
say
it.
that's part of it.
It's
with
just
being-
it's just like curse words, right? Like I can call you like a bitch, right? But if I called a woman like that has so much more connotation, especially if it's like when we're in an argument. If we're having a coffee and she hits it by accident, I'm like, oh, you bitch, like. That's probably not going to offend her.
Oh, you bitch.
Oh, you
Yeah,
bitch.
yeah,
And, like,
yeah.
joking, right?
Yeah, a little head bob
Yeah,
there.
right. Like,
And then
exactly
I know
how
what she
I said
call
that.
you.
yeah, right. But like, and then I think this gets even deeper when like you use the word when you use the word fag or when you use the word gay, like it. And then here's the thing, like if you were using that in, like we just said, like he was like, oh, isn't he Asian? Yada yada. That's fine. But if Ian and Steve are joking around and they're like, oh, you're such a fag, like I question that, because are you saying that with the knowledge that those words, when heard around and used in that context, are offensive, and it'd be same as dropping like the N word, right? I would have a problem with like two people being like, oh, you blah blah, because you're using it in such a way that's I would say that's pretty offensive. Now, if you're black and you happen to use it, it's probably a different story. Or if you're with a gay guy and he's your friend and you drop that word and you guys are comfortable, that's probably okay. But like you have to be really careful, especially with recently more charged words. And so, and especially on this, like I would hope we would never use that kind of language here in any way, because when you are providing an example for someone, for a large group of people, you want to show that it's not okay to necessarily use those words because they're not politically correct. They're offensive words, and they have a lot of connotation with those people who have been rooted with that word because it's been used.
What do you mean those people?
Right. Gay, lesbian people have been violently and physically abused while hearing those words. And so it comes with a lot of weight. And so you have to be really careful. And so when someone's like, we're too politically correct, I should be able to call a Mexican a rapist. It's like,
Yeah.
Why would you
dude, no, you can't. You're adding hate, and you're influencing people who will then just think all Mexicans are rapists. Like that's bad.
was Mexican.
I'm just saying.
I guess that's where people feel like they want to be like the old school mentality wants to be like, you're acting like a bitch, man. You're too politically correct because you can't just accept that right now that I'm talking to you like a dickhead.
Well, you remember how we used to say,
You know
that's
what I mean?
gay
Like-
for everything, like that's gay, that's gay.
Yeah, that's not acceptable
but now,
anymore.
But now we don't say it anymore. Like the word faggot. Like I heard it the other day, and it just like it didn't sit well with me. I was like,
Right.
what? Like I don't know why, but that's like the only word that doesn't sit well with me when I hear somebody else use it. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, why? Why doesn't that sit well with me? It just doesn't sit well with me. Like
'Cause it's not a it's
almost
an
like the
abusive word.
It's like almost like the CUNT word for
Yeah.
girls. Like
Ooh. Yeah,
Like,
you call a girl
it
that.
I like how you spell it out for
And
us.
I don't know. So,
yeah, because I didn't want to say it.
so
It's like
I didn't even
I'm
want to
not
say
gonna
the other
it.
word.
I don't even gonna say it.
a thought is that the millennials could have are probably growing up with a lot more exposure to these types of people, and they have a lot more sympathy with these type of people. And also, let's not forget too, we were growing up with things like Barney and like Sesame Street and like
The other thing is
being
this
nice to
too. With
others
I
and, like,
think cause and effect, right? The political correctness came around because also like we are the most diverse generation existent right now too, right? So growing up in that most diverse generation,
With social
like
media.
we're gonna start to become more politically correct. Wherein
Right.
before in those other generations there was more segregation, this and that. So
Yes.
that communication could be whatever it was. And now that that's not the case and stuff like that, that communication,
of
like I was
social
saying,
media.
there's certain vocabulary words that we've had in our language for a very long time that are going to need to start exiting out because now we're all merging together and starting to see this as like a unified community. And that means that certain terms that we've used to try to put people down can no longer be used.
it can't.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, because people can stand up a lot easier for each other and everything, like all because of social media. Back then, like you couldn't stand
on
up against
top of it's
police,
morally wrong.
police or
Yeah,
anything
it's just
like that.
wrong.
Well,
Like,
yeah, that too.
not,
But
like-
like people like say that morally wrong person is doing it. Like he's like, oh, nobody's gonna bash me or get on my case about it because no one's really gonna know about it. Who's gonna really know about it
Sure,
other than the
right.
people around my vicinity? But now social media blow everything up.
But it's
Yep.
not. But there's really not a big difference either, because although before it was less tangible to understand that the words that you're saying are spreading hatred, because it then becomes accessible to the people that you're talking to understand that, oh, I can use the word gay whenever I want. They'll go. It's just like spreading, right? Like, so those people go and say it around those people, and those people go around saying, and then all of a sudden it becomes like, oh, I guess it's okay to say, but it's not, because it offends a ton of people. It's just that your group of people don't tend to be those people who get offended. So it might be harder for you when we say, hey, you shouldn't say that. It's like, well, I don't understand. I say it all the time. All my friends are okay with it. It was like, well, you're just one little section. There's pockets of people all over the country who take offense to that word. So if you don't mind, if you could like replace the word, that would be great. And like just be more respectful. Like
Maybe just
I
do
don't
that
think it's that
title.
hard.
Okay. You know what's
Well,
funny?
no,
And we're
it-
not
it
talking about
makes
words that are
sense.
just like that guy's being a dummy. You know,
I know,
like yeah, we're
right.
not using words like that. Like
Yeah.
we're not referring to those kind of words.
Yeah.
Well,
Talking
and
about like what Steve said, those words that unsettle you, and you're just like,
Yeah,
ugh,
you're
I
just
feel
like-
wrong.
Yeah.
This doesn't feel right. Like,
I gotcha.
yeah,
Now, one thing I did want to settle here, though, Steven, I didn't say that about you. That was the Seattle Slam and Stud.
Oh,
that
that's
said that.
true. That's true.
Okay. I would never.
Might even buy you a
ever say that
taco.
to you.
I might even buy you a taco.
I said sell a taco.
And like
Sell
the-
you a
the-
taco.
I sell you a taco.
And like we've completely gone away from millennials, but like and
Yeah.
the one
Alright.
last like I guess example that comes to mind is like the Redskins, and
Oh, the change in the name.
changing the name, but people are like, oh,
Yeah.
we're too politically correct. The Redskins are just about blah blah. Like, well, yeah, I mean, if a whole fucking like sect of people are like, look, this is offensive. Like, we
Yeah.
don't have white skins, we don't have black skins. Like, I think you should probably think about changing
and,
the name.
and when you listen to the argument that they have to make,
Yeah.
and I mean,
Like,
I'm part Native American, but not like full Native American. And if I was
So-
living life like that, I might, feel seriously offended. You know what I mean?
So
I
wait.
understand their argument. You know?
Well, can I
Like,
say
right,
one
fine.
thing then? Like, what do you guys think of like, you know, they have all black colleges.
Mm-hmm.
What if they had an all white college? Most people would think that was racist, right?
They already do have a lot of all-white colleges, pretty much.
Oh, they do?
Pretty much. I
Oh,
mean,
my
I would
bad.
say that they're not. Like,
I mean, well,
saying they're only
technically
all
saying-
white, you know. But
technically
neither are the
saying they're all
all-black
white.
colleges either, though, bro. Like
Not
they don't
saying
say
all-black
we won't
colleges?
take in a white person. I've seen white people inside of all-black colleges here in Atlanta. Oh, and I'm not in Atlanta right now, but in Atlanta, you know. It tends to be. That.
And it's
not
different.
like they're not segregating us against races. That's not happening in college level. They're just saying, hey, you can. But the majority is obviously black. So I mean, if
And-
you want to come in here, hey, come on.
Right, and when and it
Not
doesn't matter,
advertised
Steve, because when
as,
you have
like,
the majority of if the whatever the majority is, they are by default not they
Or that
they
they're not
talking
can't
about
you,
racism.
you can't be
They hate
racism
racism
you can't be
against
racist to them. They are the majority, so minority. That's why the focus is on that, right?
Because a minority can't suppress the majority.
Right.
Right. There's no power there, so there can't be. It's not an opposite thing. It's not a feeding thing.
I think Ice Cube said. No, I'm just kidding. I don't.
Anyway,
So-
we've lollygagged.
I don't know. Back on
Yeah.
millennials, though. Honestly, they're. I don't know.
Quit being
think
such a
it's just-
bitch, Rocco. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just an old mentality that's just kind of like.
It irks me,
Some
man.
of
It
it's
gets under my
starting to
skin.
like. It's starting to help because there's one thing with us as people. I think we find this in generations like Ian was talking about the hippies and stuff, and the generation before that and whatnot. Is that people are difficult to change sometimes, and that perspective is like there's a lot of people changing in that generation, but there's a lot that are just like holding true to their realities and are feeling like threatened by things that are changing right now.
You-
So they're fighting.
You nailed it. And I think if I can add onto it, because you're absolutely right, and I think they don't like change, right? They want to keep to what they know and what they're comfortable with, and their defensive response is, well, just man up, because this is the way, like, just be stronger, and like, just take it, get some thick skin. Yeah, okay, that's a really easy way to get away from a problem. Why don't you man up? Why don't you do the work to research about all the different cultures and all the different religions? And why don't you educate yourself and put the time in to make sure that you're respectful enough of other people instead of just resulting back to habitual, like, horrible language that is offending people? Why don't you man up and do the work? Because we're putting the work in right now to understand and be respectful, and that's a lot harder to do than just say, well, just deal with it and suppress it.
Well, and
Yeah.
just wait until we're older, and we are the older generation.
know.
We're gonna probably be saying what they're saying about them. Like, I can't believe these kids these days. They want A, B, C, and D. Okay, because
And now
they
there's
are
not.
different.
No, we
Yeah.
can't put everybody in the same baskets and stuff like that. Like I was saying,
No.
there's some in those generations that are making that change, and that they're
Oh,
willing
absolutely.
to adapt with the change, and they can do that.
No.
And then there's a lot that like to go against that stream of life, and those are the ones that have the issue right now.
And what's
those are
even
the ones that have the problem.
Is there's millennials that are having this mentality of just have thicker skin. I'm just like, okay, all right.
It's like, what are you talking about, man? We have dual income households where husband and wife are working their asses off. Some of them have multiple jobs and
Yeah.
still are not being able to like thrive really well in this world. Like fuck off. Because before it was
Working.
like one
We're-
job, one person could go to a job and work 40 hours a week and they lived really nice fucking lives.
Yeah.
So like don't sit here and give us bullshit. We're busting our asses. We have thick ass skin.
Right.
It is no easy task, and to act like we're just being some silly, bitches, like that drives me nuts.
I know. Yeah. It's like working all day and then being like, man, we really need to improve.
And
this
like you're
problem.
entitled. What are you talking about? We're out here trying to get fucking jobs. They're gonna be able to pay us to do what we want to do, and when we finally get these jobs, it's like still even then it's like
It's iffy.
we still have to have my wife has to work still though. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Or like we still can't go do all the different shit we want to do. Or
Let's not
like,
complaining, dude. Let's improve that. Let's
on
fix
top
that.
of
Right.
on top of those things like the education and stuff like that, like
Yeah.
we're talking about. So it's like a lot of that has puts a huge weight on us, and it suppresses us into like a debt slavery kind of deal.
Totally.
And no, man, that
Yeah.
like
Screw that noise.
yeah, screw that noise.